Washington, D.C. in February wore its cold like armor. The Potomac River reflected the steel-gray sky, its water sluggish with the threat of ice. Along Constitution Avenue, bare trees stood like sentinels, their branches sketching dark patterns against the pale winter light. The city hummed with its familiar rhythm, the distant growl of traffic, the measured footsteps of bureaucrats and soldiers, the whispered exchanges of power that happened in hallways and shadowed alcoves. Inside the Pentagon, that massive five-sided fortress of American military might, the morning briefing had just concluded. Officers filed out of Conference Room 2A with careful precision, their faces neutral, their postures rigid. Nobody spoke above a whisper. Nobody lingered, because General Ethan Walker was still in the room. For stars gleamed on his uniform, for silver points that represented decades of sacrifice, of missions that would never be declassified, of decisions that cost him sleep and sanity. At 47 years old, Ethan Walker was a legend within these walls. The Silver Star, 2 bronze stars, a Purple Heart he never wore. He'd commanded operations in Kandahar and Mosul, had walked through fire and blood, had made calls that saved hundreds of lives and haunted him with the few he couldn't save. But if you asked anyone in the Pentagon what they feared most about General Walker, they wouldn't mention the combat decorations. They'd mention his eyes. Cold, granite, unyielding. Eyes that looked through you, not at you. Eyes that had seen too much and felt too little. Colonel Harris, a 20-year veteran himself, had once described it perfectly over whiskey at an officers' club. The general doesn't have ice in his veins. He has permafrost. Nothing melts it. Nothing reaches him. Now, Ethan stood alone at the conference room window, hands clasped behind his back in that parade rest stance that had become his default position. Outside, the morning light struggled against the clouds. His reflection stared back at him from a glass, square jaw, close-cropped dark hair touched with silver at the temples, shoulders that carried authority like a second skin. Empty eyes. He saw it. He always saw it. The hollow place where warmth used to live. Sarah. Her name arrived like it always did. Uninvited, unwelcome, unavoidable. 7 years. 7 years since the black sedan had lost control on a rain-slicked road in Arlington. 7 years since the phone call that had reached him in a forward operating base in Afghanistan. The words crackling through a satellite connection that made tragedy sound even more distant and unreal. General Walker, I'm calling about your wife. He'd flown home to bury her. Stood in his dress blues at Arlington National Cemetery while they folded the flag that had draped her coffin. Not for her service, but as courtesy for his. The rifle salute had echoed across the pristine rows of white headstones, and he'd felt nothing. Not because he didn't love her, because feeling anything at all would have destroyed him, and he still had a war to fight. So he'd locked it away. All of it. The grief, the guilt, the suffocating knowledge that he'd been halfway around the world, making tactical decisions, while she died alone on wet asphalt. He'd locked it in some deep vault inside himself, and thrown away the key. Better to feel nothing than to feel that. The vault had held 7 years, and it still held, which meant 7 years of this walking through life like a ghost in uniform, respected and feared and utterly, completely alone. General Walker? Ethan turned. Lieutenant Shin stood in the doorway, young and nervous, holding a tablet like a shield. Sir, your vehicle is ready. You have the Joint Chiefs meeting at 1100 hours. Acknowledged. His voice came out flat, automatic. Dismissed. The lieutenant vanished. Ethan collected his briefcase, black leather, organized with military precision, and walked the corridors of the Pentagon with his usual measured stride. People moved aside. Conversations paused. Respect, yes, but also something else. Distance. Everyone kept their distance. The February air hit him like a slap when he exited the building. His breath misted in front of his face. The black Chevrolet Suburban waited at the curb, armored, tinted windows, government plates. His driver, Sergeant Morrison, stood beside it at attention. Morning, General. Morning, Sergeant. The routine never changed. Ethan slid into the back seat, the door closing with that solid, expensive thunk that spoke of reinforced steel. The interior smelled of leather and coffee. His world. Controlled. Isolated. Morrison pulled away from the curb, navigating through the security checkpoints with practiced ease. Ethan opened his briefcase, pulled out the dossier for the Joint Chiefs meeting. Budget allocations, troop deployments, strategic recommendations for the Syrian border situation, the usual deadly calculus of his profession. He was 3 pages into the document when Morrison slowed the vehicle. Traffic. Constitution Avenue was clogged, some kind of construction detour forcing everyone into a single lane. The Suburban rolled to a stop near the corner of 12th Street, idling in the cold morning. Ethan didn't look up. He was reading about force projection ratios. Then movement. Something caught in his peripheral vision. A flash of color against the gray morning. He looked up, and his entire world paused. She appeared like a figure in a painting. One of those Renaissance works where the background fades into shadow and all the light falls on a single subject. A woman in a caramel-colored coat, the wool slightly too large for her frame, the collar turned up against the cold. Dark auburn hair that fell past her shoulders in waves that hadn't been tamed by a brush this morning. She was hurrying along the sidewalk with that distinctive half-jog of someone running late, a canvas tote bag bouncing against her hip, one hand clutching a travel mug. She stopped, right beside the Suburban. Ethan watched, and didn't know why he was watching, why his eyes had abandoned the dossier, why his entire attention had narrowed to this stranger, as she set down her travel mug on top of a newspaper box and dropped her tote bag at her feet. Then she turned to face the vehicle's rear window, the tinted glass that kept the world from seeing in. She couldn't see him. The windows were too dark, professionally tinted for security and privacy. But he could see her. She was fixing her hair, using his window as a mirror. Ethan sat frozen, briefcase open on his lap, as this young woman, mid-20s maybe, with a face that held an interesting asymmetry, one eyebrow slightly higher than the other, lips pressed together in concentration, gathered her wind-tangled hair and attempted to smooth it into something presentable. She made a small noise of frustration. It wasn't working. The static had won. Then she laughed. He was in uniform, full military dress, dark blue with golden buttons, rows of ribbons and medals across his chest, for silver stars on his shoulders. Tall, maybe 6'2", with that kind of rigid posture that spoke of decades of discipline. Dark hair, silver at the temples, a face that looked carved from granite, all hard angles and sharp lines, with eyes that were intense, impossibly intense, steel gray and focused directly on her. Olivia felt her breath catch. She'd grown up around firefighters, around men and women who walked into burning buildings for a living, so she knew courage and strength when she saw it. But this was different. This man didn't just carry authority. He was authority, and he was looking at her like he was trying to solve a tactical problem. "Hi," she managed, her voice coming out slightly higher than normal. "Can I help you find something?" He didn't move immediately, just stood there assessing. She had the distinct feeling he'd already cataloged every exit, every window, every potential threat in the room. Military habit, probably. Then he spoke. "I'm looking for a book." His voice matched his appearance, deep, controlled, with that commanding quality that made you want to stand at attention. "Well," Olivia said, recovering some of her composure, "you're in the right place. We have several. What kind of book?" Was that a joke? Did she just attempt humor with a man who looked like he could order an airstrike with a hand gesture? But something shifted in his expression, the tiniest softening at the corner of his mouth. Not quite a smile, but close. "Poetry," he said. Olivia blinked. "Poetry. Mary Oliver. Do you carry her work?" Mary Oliver, the woman who wrote about wild geese and summer days and paying attention to the world's soft animal beauty. This man, this walking embodiment of military precision, wanted Mary Oliver. "We do," Olivia said, moving toward the poetry section with practiced ease. "We have most of her collections. New and selected devotions, thirst. Are you looking for anything specific?" He followed her, and she was acutely aware of his presence. The way he moved through the narrow aisles without disturbing anything, the way other customers unconsciously gave him space. "A gift," he said, "for someone who—" He trailed off. Olivia glanced back at him. For just a second, his expression had shifted into something unguarded. vulnerable, lost. Then it was gone. The walls back up. For someone who appreciates observation, he finished, paying attention to small things. Something about the way he said it, the careful word choice, the weight behind it, made Olivia's heart squeeze. This wasn't just a casual purchase. She pulled devotions from the shelf. This one's my favorite. It's a collection of her best work. There's this poem, The Summer Day, where she asks, "What is it you plan to do with your one wild and precious life?" She held the book out to him. Their fingers brushed as he took it. The contact lasted maybe half a second, but Olivia felt it like an electric shock, some kind of charge passing between them. His eyes met hers, really met them, and for one breathless moment, she saw past the armor, past the stars and ribbons and granite exterior, to something underneath, something wounded, something lonely. Then he looked away, opening the book to a random page. "Tell me, what is it you plan to do with your one wild and precious life?" He read softly. "Yes, this is appropriate." "She's wonderful," Olivia said, trying to keep her voice steady. "Her poems make you remember that beauty exists even in difficult times." He looked at her again. "You sound like you've needed that reminder." It wasn't a question. It was an observation, and it was so accurate, so precisely aimed at the truth of her life, that Olivia felt her defenses crumble. "My father died 2 years ago," she heard herself say. "Firefighter. Line of duty. And sometimes I forget that the world isn't just grief and bills and trying to hold everything together. Mary Oliver helps me remember there's more." Why was she telling him this? She didn't share her story with strangers. She barely shared it with friends. But something about this man, something about the sadness she'd glimpsed in his eyes, made her feel like maybe he understood. Maybe he carried his own weight. "I'm sorry for your loss," he said. And the words, which could have been empty platitude, somehow weren't. He meant them. "Thank you for the recommendation." He moved toward the counter. Olivia followed, rang up the purchase. $16.95. He handed her a 20 without looking at the price, told her to keep the change. As she wrapped the book in tissue paper, Margaret always wrapped books in tissue paper, said it made them feel like gifts. She gathered her courage. "This morning," she said, not looking up from the wrapping, "on Constitution Avenue. That was you. In that car." Silence. She forced herself to meet his eyes. He was watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. Surprise maybe. Or assessment. "Yes," he said finally. "I'm sorry I used your window as a mirror. I didn't realize anyone was inside." "No apology necessary." He took the wrapped book. "You were. It was." He stopped, struggled for words, which seemed completely unlike him. "You were beautiful," he said quietly. The moment, not self-conscious, just present. Olivia's heart did something complicated in her chest. "That's the nicest thing anyone said about my terrible hair," she managed. This time he did smile. Small, brief, but real. "I'm Ethan," he said. "Ethan Walker." "Olivia. Olivia Carter." They shook hands formally, and again, that strange electricity. "Thank you for the book, Olivia." "You're welcome, Ethan." He turned to leave, and she thought that was it. A strange, lovely encounter that would become a story she'd replay in her mind on quiet nights. But at the door he paused. "Look back. I may return," he said, "for more recommendations." "I'm here most days," Olivia said, trying not to sound too eager. "We have a lot of books." That almost smile again. "I noticed." Then he was gone, the door chiming softly behind him. Olivia stood at the counter, heart racing, staring at the empty space where he'd been. "Well," Margaret said from behind her, voice rich with amusement. "That was interesting." "That was a 4-star general," Olivia breathed. "That was a 4-star general looking at you like you were the most fascinating thing he'd seen in years." He was buying Mary Oliver poetry. He was buying an excuse to talk to you. Olivia turned to face her boss. "You think?" Margaret's smile was knowing and kind. "Honey, I've been watching people fall in love in this bookstore for 38 years. I know the look. That wasn't falling in love. That was curiosity. Maybe. Keep telling yourself that." But as Olivia returned to restocking shelves, her hands were shaking slightly, and her mind was racing. Ethan Walker, a man who carried sadness like a uniform, a man who'd noticed her, really noticed her, in a moment when she was just being herself. This morning changed something, she thought, for both of us. She just didn't know what yet. He came back 4 days later. Olivia was helping a customer in the history section, a Georgetown student writing a thesis on the civil rights movement, when the bell chimed. She glanced up reflexively, the way you do when you work retail. And there he was. No uniform this time. Civilian clothes, dark jeans, a charcoal wool coat, a gray Henley underneath that made his shoulders look impossibly broad. He looked younger somehow, less intimidating, though his posture still screamed military. Their eyes met across the store. He nodded, a small acknowledgement. Olivia's stomach flipped. She forced herself to focus on the student, helped him locate 3 books on the Freedom Riders, but her awareness of Ethan's presence hummed through every word. She could feel him moving through the store, could sense his location even when she couldn't see him. It was unnerving and thrilling. When the student left, she found Ethan in the fiction section, studying the spine of a worn copy of All the Light We Cannot See. That one's good, she said, approaching. Heartbreaking, but good. He looked at her. You've read it? Twice. Once for myself, once for book club. There wasn't a dry eye in the room. You're in a book club? Margaret hosts one here every 3rd Tuesday. Mostly women over 50, but they let me join. We drink wine and argue about symbolism. That almost smile. Sounds dangerous. Literary analysis is a contact sport. He put the book back, turned to face her fully, up close, without the barrier of the counter between them. He was even more striking. She could see the small scar above his left eyebrow, the slight asymmetry of his nose that suggested it had been broken at some point. Signs of a life lived in hard places. I wanted to thank you, he said, for the Mary Oliver recommendation. It was well received. I'm glad. She paused, curiosity getting the better of her. Can I ask who it was for? Something flickered in his expression. A friend's daughter. She just lost her mother. Cancer. I didn't know what to say to her, so I gave her poetry instead. Yes. Olivia felt her heart break a little. That was kind. It was inadequate. No, she said firmly. Words are never inadequate when they're chosen with care. You gave her permission to feel, to grieve. That's the most generous gift there is. He studied her with those intense gray eyes. You're very certain about that. I know what it's like to receive empty condolences. He's in a better place. Time heals all wounds. At least he didn't suffer. People mean well, but platitudes don't help. Beauty helps. Truth helps. Mary Oliver helps. Ethan was quiet for a moment. Then, what would have helped you? After your father? The question caught her off guard. Not because it was invasive. Somehow it didn't feel that way coming from him. But because no one had ever asked. Someone acknowledging that it was terrible, she said slowly. That there was no silver lining. No reason or purpose or cosmic plan. Just loss. And letting that be enough. It was terrible, Ethan said. And I'm sorry. The simple validation hit her harder than she'd expected. Her throat tightened. Thank you, she whispered. They stood there in the fiction aisle, surrounded by thousands of stories, and the moment stretched between them like something tangible. Finally, Ethan cleared his throat. I'm not good at this. At what? Conversation. Connection. I'm better at tactical briefings. He paused. But I'd like to buy you coffee. If you're interested. If that's not inappropriate. Olivia's heart kicked into overdrive. Are you asking me out? I'm asking if you'd like coffee. I'm told there's a difference, though I'm not entirely clear on the parameters. She laughed. Couldn't help it. His complete sincerity, the way he approached social interaction like a military operation, was oddly endearing. Coffee would be nice, she said. I'm off at 6. I can return at 6. Or you could wait, she offered. There's a reading chair in the corner. I won't tell Margaret if you stay. He considered this. Would that be acceptable? I don't want to be intrusive. You can read. That's what people do here. Read. sometimes for hours. You'll fit right in. So he stayed. Olivia went back to work, processing new inventory, helping customers, answering Margaret's raised eyebrows with a look that said don't say anything. And Ethan sat in the leather armchair by the philosophy section reading. She snuck glances at him when she could. He looked absorbed, peaceful almost, the hard lines of his face softening as he turned pages. A general reading in a bookstore. What's your story, Ethan Walker? She wondered. What made you so sad? At 6:15 p.m., after Margaret had left with her usual knowing smile, Olivia and Ethan walked out into the February evening. The temperature had dropped. Their breath made clouds in the air. There's a place around the corner, Olivia said, pulling on her gloves. They do good espresso and terrible poetry open mic nights on Thursdays. Is today Thursday? Thankfully, no. They walked side by side down Connecticut Avenue. The city was alive with evening energy, people rushing from offices, restaurants beginning to fill, the metro entrance swallowing and releasing streams of commuters. Olivia was hyper-aware of Ethan beside her. He walked like he was on patrol, eyes constantly scanning, maintaining awareness of his surroundings. Protection mode. Do you ever turn it off? She asked. He glanced at her. Turn what off? The vigilance. The constant assessment. He was quiet for a moment. No, it's instinct now. Decades of training. Must be exhausting. It's necessary. They reached the coffee shop. Bricks and grounds. A converted townhouse basement with exposed pipes and mismatched furniture. Olivia ordered cappuccino. Ethan ordered black coffee. Paid for both before she could protest. They found a table in the corner, away from the main flow of traffic. So, Olivia said, wrapping her hands around her cup for warmth. 4-star general. That's impressive. It's a rank. It's an achievement. They're what? 40-something active 4-star generals in the entire military. 38 currently. Exactly. So impressive. He looked uncomfortable with the praise. It represents time and opportunity as much as merit. I don't believe that. You don't get to that level without being exceptional. You don't know anything about me. It wasn't hostile, just factual. Then tell me, Olivia said. I'm a good listener. Ethan studied his coffee like it held tactical secrets. I'm 47. Joined the army at 18. Spent most of my adult life deployed. Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria. Places that are still classified. Made decisions that kept soldiers alive and decisions that... He stopped. I'm not good company, Olivia. I'll be the judge of that. I'm warning you that I'm... He struggled. Damaged. Limited emotional range. My therapist uses the term affect dysregulation. You have a therapist? The Army mandates it after certain incidents. And what incidents were those? His jaw tightened. The kind where you come home. Oh, survivor's guilt. PTSD. Whatever label the military used, she recognized the shape of it. The weight. My father had nightmares, she said quietly. After bad fires. He'd wake up my mom, wouldn't remember doing it. Just trapped in the burning building, trying to find the exit. Ethan met her eyes. Did he get help? Eventually. It took years. Firefighter culture isn't great with vulnerability. Military culture's worse. I imagine. They sat in companionable silence for a moment. Around them, other conversations hummed. College students arguing about politics. A couple on what was clearly a first date. An older man reading a newspaper with focused intensity. Normal people. Normal lives. Why did you ask me for coffee? Olivia asked. Really? Ethan turned his cup in his hands. Because when I saw you adjusting your hair in my car window, you were unself-conscious. Present. Alive in a way that He exhaled. I haven't felt alive in a very long time. And I wanted to know if that feeling was real or just delusion. The honesty of it stole her breath. And, she whispered, is it real? He looked at her. Really looked. And in his eyes, she saw fear and hope tangled together. I think so, he said. Which terrifies me. Why? Because everyone I've ever loved ends up hurt. There it was. The wound beneath the armor. Olivia reached across the table, put her hand over his. His skin was warm, calloused. He stiffened at the contact, but didn't pull away. I'm not afraid, she said. You should be. Maybe. But I'm not. They stayed like that, hands touching on a scarred wooden table in a basement coffee shop, while the city moved around them and something fragile and dangerous sparked to life between them. Tell me something true, Ethan said suddenly. About yourself. Something you don't usually share. Olivia considered. I'm writing a novel. Have been for 2 years. It's about a woman who loses everything and has to decide whether to rebuild or disappear. I'm terrified it's terrible and also terrified that even if it's good, no one will care. What happens to her? The woman in your novel? I don't know yet. I haven't written the ending. Why not? Because I don't know how it ends. For me, I mean. Whether people like me. People who've lost the person who defined them. Whether we get to be whole again or if we just manage. Ethan's thumb moved against the back of her hand. A small, unconscious gesture. I think we get to choose, he said. Whole or managing. It's a choice. Have you chosen? His expression went distant. I chose managing. Seemed safer. And now, he refocused on her. Now I'm sitting in a coffee shop with a woman I barely know, feeling things I haven't felt in 7 years, and questioning every defensive decision I've made. Good, Olivia said. Good. Questions mean you're alive. Alive enough to want more. I'm not sure I know how to want more. We'll figure it out. We. She'd said we. Ethan heard it. His expression shifted into something that might have been wonder. You're either very brave or very foolish, he said. Probably both. They stayed at the coffee shop until closing. 2 hours of conversation that ranged from books to music, to the ridiculous expense of DC rent, to whether drones had fundamentally changed modern warfare, his expertise, to whether literary fiction still mattered in the age of Netflix, hers. They disagreed on several points. He was more pragmatic. She was more idealistic. But they listened to each other. Really listened. When they finally left, walking out into the sharp cold of night, Ethan did something that surprised both of them. He offered her his arm. Old-fashioned. Courtly. Completely at odds with his reputation as a hardened military commander. Olivia slipped her hand through, and they walked like that down the quiet street. A general and a bookstore clerk, finding warmth in each other's proximity. Can I see you again? Ethan asked when they reached the metro station. Yes. When? Whenever you want. Tomorrow. Olivia laughed. Eager. Apparently. Tomorrow's good. Come to the store again. I'll find you something new to read. He nodded. Then, with visible hesitation, he lifted her hand to his lips and kissed her knuckles. The gesture was so unexpected, so tender, that Olivia felt tears prick her eyes. Good night, Olivia Carter. Good night, Ethan Walker. She descended into the metro, and he watched until she disappeared from sight. Then General Ethan Walker walked to his vehicle, climbed into the back seat, and sat in the darkness for 10 minutes, trying to understand what was happening to him. The vault was opening, and he was terrified, and he didn't want it to stop. 2 weeks passed like a dream. Ethan came to the bookstore 4 more times, sometimes in uniform, sometimes in civilian clothes, always with that careful formality that Olivia was beginning to recognize as his way of navigating a world where he felt uncertain. They talked. God, they talked. About everything and nothing. Poetry and politics. The ethics of intervention. Her manuscript. His deployments. The ones he was allowed to discuss. Her mother's health. Osteoarthritis making it hard for her to work. Medical bills piling up. His guilt about never being home. About choosing duty over presence. They went for coffee again. Then dinner at a small Vietnamese restaurant in Arlington. Then a walk along the National Mall at night. The monuments lit like beacons, their conversation visible in clouds of breath. He was careful with her. Almost too careful. Never pushing, never presuming. He'd touch her hand, her shoulder, but always briefly. Always with permission implicit in the gesture. Olivia wanted more. But she understood. This was a man learning how to feel again. You couldn't rush that. It would be like forcing a flower to bloom. Damaging. So she matched his pace, let him set the rhythm, and fell for him a little more with each encounter. On the 15th day, a Thursday afternoon in early March, the sky opened up. Olivia was closing the bookstore alone. Margaret had left early for a dental appointment, trusting her with the end-of-day routine. It was nearly 7 p.m. The last customers had left, and she was running the cash report when the rain started. Not a gentle spring rain. A deluge. Thunder cracked overhead. Lightning flashed through the display windows. Water hammered the sidewalk with biblical intensity. Perfect, Olivia muttered, staring at the downpour. She'd walked to work this morning because the metro was doing weekend maintenance on her line. Now she'd have to choose between waiting it out or getting absolutely drenched. The bell chimed. She turned, startled. She'd locked the door 10 minutes ago. And there was Ethan, dripping wet, hair plastered to his head, his wool coat dark with rain. Did I forget to lock? I have certain skills, he said, slightly sheepish. Lockpicking is part of ranger training. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have. You broke into my bookstore. Technically, broke is a strong word. The lock was engaged, but the mechanism is standard pin and tumbler, which with the right tension wrench. He stopped. I'm making this worse, aren't I? Olivia laughed. She couldn't help it. You broke into a bookstore, using military training, during a thunderstorm. I saw you were still here. Alone. The storm. He trailed off, looking genuinely uncomfortable. I wanted to make sure you could get home safely. Her heart did that complicated flutter thing again. Ethan, that's sweet. Illegal, but sweet. I can leave. Don't you dare. She grabbed a towel from the back office. They kept them for spills, and handed it to him. You're soaked. He dried his face and hair, but the coat was hopeless. She took it from him, hung it over the radiator to drip dry. Thunder boomed again, so loud the windows rattled. I don't think this is stopping anytime soon, Olivia said, watching the street transform into a river. No. Ethan moved to stand beside her at the window. Forecast said all night. You checked the forecast before breaking in? Reconnaissance is important. They stood side by side, watching the storm. The shop felt suddenly intimate. Warm light, walls of books, the sound of rain creating a cocoon around them. I haven't been in a storm like this since Mosul, Ethan said quietly. The rain there, it turned everything to mud. Made movement impossible. We just sit in the forward operating base and wait it out. What did you do while you waited? Read mostly. Wrote letters. Played cards. Tried not to think about how stuck we were. Did it work? Not thinking about it. No. Olivia glanced at him. His profile was strong, shadowed in the dim light, but his expression was distant, lost in memory. What are you thinking about? She asked softly. That I'm better at being stuck in a war zone than being here. With you. Feeling. Feeling what? He turned to face her, and in his eyes, she saw vulnerability and desire and fear all tangled together. Like I'm coming back to life, he said. And it hurts. God, Olivia, it hurts to feel again. Her throat tightened. I know. Do you really? My father died, and for months I was numb. Just automatic. Wake up, go through motions, sleep, repeat. And then one day I was reading, Mary Oliver actually, the poem about the wild geese, and I just broke, sobbed in the middle of a bookstore, and it hurt so much I thought I'd die from it. But you didn't. No, I didn't. The hurt meant I was alive, meant I'd loved him enough that losing him mattered. Ethan reached up, cupped her face in his hand. His palm was warm against her cheek, calloused, gentle. I lost my wife, he said. 7 years ago. Car accident. I was deployed. Didn't get to say goodbye. And I locked everything away because if I felt any of it, I couldn't function. Couldn't lead. Couldn't do my job. Tears spilled down Olivia's cheeks. Ethan, and then you used my car window as a mirror, and you laughed at yourself, and something cracked. Something I thought was sealed forever. And now I can't stop thinking about you. Can't stop wanting. He swallowed hard. Can't stop wanting to feel again. With you. Then feel, she whispered. I'm here. I'm not going anywhere. You should. You should run from me. I'm broken, Olivia. She kissed him, stood on her toes and pressed her lips to his, cutting off the self-condemnation, the warnings, all the reasons he thought he didn't deserve this. For a heartbeat, he froze. Then he kissed her back, His arms came around her, pulling her close, and he kissed her like she was oxygen and he'd been drowning. Desperate and reverent and clumsy and perfect. Outside, thunder rolled and rain hammered the street. Inside, surrounded by 10,000 stories, they wrote the beginning of their own. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Ethan rested his forehead against hers. "I don't know how to do this," he said. "I don't know how to be with someone without destroying them." "You won't destroy me. You can't know that. Neither can you." He pulled back to look at her. "Are you always this stubborn? Are you always this self-sabotaging?" "Yes." "Then we'll balance each other out." He laughed, a real, full laugh that transformed his face into something young and unguarded. "You're extraordinary," he said. "I'm ordinary. You're just not used to people who aren't intimidated by stars and ribbons." "Everyone's intimidated by stars and ribbons. I'm intimidated by spiders and medical debt. A uniform doesn't scare me." He kissed her again. Softer this time. Slower. Learning the shape of her mouth. The taste of her. When they separated, Olivia's legs felt unsteady. "Stay," she said, "until the storm passes. We can." She gestured vaguely at the store. "We can read. Talk. Whatever." "I don't want to read." "No, I want to memorize you." His thumb traced her cheekbone. "The way your eyebrow does that thing when you're thinking. The freckles on your nose. The exact color of your eyes. I've been trying to figure it out. Hazel, but not quite. More like... Like what?" "Like autumn. Brown and gold and green all at once." Olivia felt her heart crack open. They settled into the reading nook, the overstuffed love seat near the poetry section. Ethan sat first, and Olivia tucked herself against his side, fitting into the space between his shoulder and chest like she'd been designed for it. His arm came around her. Secure. Protective. "Is this okay?" he asked. "More than okay." They sat like that while the storm raged outside, talking sometimes, silent other times. His fingers played with her hair. She traced the veins on the back of his hand. "Tell me about her," Olivia said eventually. "Your wife, if you want to." Ethan was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, "Her name was Sarah. We met at Fort Bragg. She was a nurse. I was a captain. She was like everything I wasn't. Laughed all the time. Made friends with everyone. She used to say I was her project. That she'd teach me how to be human." "She sounds wonderful." "She was. We had 15 years. Good years, mostly. But I was gone a lot. Deployments. Training exercises. I kept telling her, after this tour, after this assignment, I'll be home more. I'll be present. But you didn't get the chance." "No. And she died thinking I chose the army over her. Which I did. Every time." Olivia pressed closer. "She knew you loved her." "Did she?" "I was on my 3rd deployment in 4 years. I missed anniversaries, birthdays. I loved my job more than I loved being with her." His voice cracked. "And then she was gone, and I couldn't apologize. Couldn't fix it. Just gone." "Ethan." Olivia turned to face him. "Grief lies. It tells you that you weren't enough, that you failed, that you're guilty. But loving someone who serves, whether it's military or firefighting or medicine, means accepting that service is part of who they are. Your wife married a soldier. She knew what that meant. She deserved better. Maybe she got exactly who she needed. Maybe she loved you because of your dedication, not in spite of it." He looked at her with such raw hope that it hurt. "How are you so sure?" he asked. "Because I see you, who you are. And if I can see it after 2 weeks, she saw it after 15 years. He kissed her forehead, her temple, her cheek. "You're saving me," he whispered. "No, you're saving yourself. I'm just here. That's enough. God, Olivia, you being here is everything." Outside, the storm began to ease. The thunder moved east, the rain softening to a steady patter. But neither of them moved. They stayed curled together in the bookstore, surrounded by stories of love and loss and redemption, writing their own chapter. And for the first time in 7 years, Ethan Walker felt something beyond duty and honor and the weight of command. He felt hope. March gave way to April, and the cherry blossoms came to Washington. The tidal basin erupted in pink and white. Tourists flooded the monuments, and Olivia and Ethan navigated the delicate balance of a relationship that existed in the spaces between his duties and her life. He took her to dinner at restaurants where generals and senators dined, where she felt underdressed in her thrift store dresses, and he looked at her like she outshone every polished socialite in the room. She dragged him to poetry readings in Tacoma Park, to used record stores, to a midnight screening of Casablanca at an indie theater where they shared popcorn, and he held her hand through the whole film. They were careful. He never wore his uniform when they were together in public. They avoided the Pentagon, avoided military functions. This thing between them was too new, too fragile to expose to scrutiny. But Washington, D.C. is a small town when it comes to power, and people were starting to notice. The photograph appeared on April 15th. Olivia saw it first. She was at work, scrolling through her phone during a slow afternoon, when her mother sent a text. "Mom, is this you?" Followed by a link. Olivia clicked it, and her stomach dropped. It was a gossip blog, Capital Whispers, that specialized in political intrigue and scandal. The headline read, "4-star general's mystery woman. Who is she?" Below it a photo. Her and Ethan, leaving the Vietnamese restaurant in Arlington 3 weeks ago. His hand on her lower back. Her face turned up toward his, both of them smiling. The photo was grainy, taken from across the street, with a telephoto lens. But it was unmistakably them. The article wasn't long. General Ethan Walker, one of the Pentagon's most decorated and private officers, was spotted last month with an unidentified woman at Faux 88 in Arlington. Sources say the pair appeared intimate and comfortable, leading to speculation about the notoriously single general's personal life. Walker, 47, has been a widower since 2019 and has maintained an almost monastic existence since his wife's death. The identity of his companion remains unknown, but Capital Whispers is digging. Stay tuned. Olivia's hands were shaking. They'd been so careful. How had someone? Her phone rang. "Ethan, did you see it?" His voice was tightly controlled. "Just now." "Ethan, I'm so sorry, I don't know how." "You have nothing to apologize for. This is my world. I should have anticipated it." "What do we do?" Silence on the other end. Then, "I'm coming to you. Don't talk to anyone. Don't respond to messages. I'll be there in 20 minutes. He hung up. Olivia stood in the middle of marginalia books, heart pounding, looking at the photo of them on her phone. They looked happy. She hadn't realized how happy until she saw them captured like that. Two people finding each other in a complicated world. But now that happiness felt exposed. Vulnerable. Margaret emerged from the back office. "Liv, you okay? You look pale." "Someone photographed me and Ethan. It's online. They're calling me his mystery woman." Margaret's expression shifted to concern. "Let me see." Olivia handed over her phone. Margaret read, her lips pressing into a thin line. "Vultures. They can't let people be happy in peace. It's only going to get worse, isn't it? Once they find out who I am." "Probably." But Margaret looked up. "Do you care about him?" "Yes." "Does he care about you?" "I think so." "Yes." "Then the rest is noise. Uncomfortable noise, but noise. You don't make relationship decisions based on gossip blogs." Olivia wanted to believe that, but she'd grown up in D.C. She'd seen what happened when the media decided someone was interesting. The scrutiny, the invasion, the way they turned human beings into stories. And Ethan, Ethan had worked so hard to protect his privacy, to keep his grief and his healing out of public view. She'd ruined that. Ethan arrived in full uniform. He walked into the bookstore like he owned it, like the 3 customers browsing suddenly didn't exist. He found Olivia at the counter and pulled her into his arms, without a word. She buried her face in his chest, breathing in the familiar scent of him, wool and coffee and something clean and military. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "Stop." His hand cradled the back of her head. "This isn't your fault. They're going to dig into my life, my family, my father's death, everything. Let them." She pulled back to look at him. "You can't mean that. I spent 7 years hiding, being invisible, pretending I was fine." His eyes, those gray, intense eyes, held hers. "I'm done hiding. If they want to know who you are, fine. You're the woman I'm falling in love with. They can print that. Olivia's breath caught. Falling in love. I wasn't going to say it yet. Too soon, I know. But she kissed him. Right there in the middle of the bookstore. In front of Margaret and 3 startled customers and God and everyone. She kissed him like the world wasn't watching. Like they had all the time and privacy in the world. When they finally separated, Ethan's expression had softened into wonder. I love you too, Olivia said. In case that wasn't clear. It was reasonably clear. Just reasonably. Tactically clear. She laughed, and some of the tension broke. But reality reasserted itself quickly. Ethan, what happens now? When they find out I'm nobody? A bookstore clerk with student debt, and a dead dad? When they compare me to... She stopped. To Sarah. Yes. His jaw tightened. You're not in competition with Sarah. She was my past. You're my present. My future, if you'll have me. The media won't see it that way. I don't care what the media sees. Your career is not more important than you. You don't mean that. I've spent 29 years prioritizing my career over everything. My marriage. My happiness. My life. I'm not doing it anymore. He cupped her face. You're the first thing that's made me want to live, not just survive. I'm not giving that up because some gossip blog wants a story. Tears spilled down her cheeks. This is going to get ugly. Probably. People will judge me. Judge us. Definitely. And you're okay with that? I'm okay with you. Everything else, we'll handle. They didn't have to wait long. By the next morning, Capital Whispers had updated their article. Mystery woman identified, Olivia Carter, 28, bookstore employee with tragic past. The new piece included her full name, her father's obituary, her address in Adams Morgan, thankfully not the exact apartment number, her job at Marginalia Books, a photo of her from a friend's wedding 3 years ago, pulled from Facebook, speculation about the age gap and power dynamic, a quote from an unnamed Pentagon source calling the relationship concerning. Olivia read it sitting at her kitchen table, her mother hovering anxiously behind her. Sweetheart, maybe you should. What? Break up with him because people are nosy. Olivia's voice came out sharper than intended. Sorry, Mom. I know. Her mother sat down, arthritic hands wrapping around a coffee mug. But this man, he's very public, very powerful. Are you ready for that? I don't know. Probably not. But I love him, Mom. And he loves me. Isn't that worth fighting for? Her mother's expression softened. Your father would have liked him. A man in uniform who looks at you like that? He'd approve. You think? I know. He always said the best men are the ones who've seen darkness, and choose light anyway. This general of yours, he's seen darkness. Yeah, he has. And he chose you. That's not nothing, Liv. The storm intensified over the next week. More articles. More speculation. A segment on a cable news show about military leadership and personal relationships. An op-ed in the Washington Post questioning whether a 4-star general should be romantically involved with a civilian given the security implications. Ethan's phone never stopped ringing. His colleagues at the Pentagon offered everything from support to veiled warnings. His superiors called a meeting to discuss the optics. He told them all the same thing. His personal life was personal, but the pressure mounted. Someone leaked his home address. Reporters camped outside his Georgetown townhouse. Olivia stopped going to work because photographers waited outside Marginalia. Margaret had to call the police twice to remove people from the store. They couldn't go anywhere without being followed. Couldn't have a private moment without it becoming public. It was suffocating. 2 weeks after the initial photo surfaced, Ethan came to Olivia's apartment at midnight. She opened the door to find him in jeans and a t-shirt, exhausted and furious and heartbroken. We need to talk, he said. And Olivia knew. Before he said another word, she knew. She let him in, and they sat on her worn couch, the one her father had bought at a yard sale 20 years ago, the one she couldn't bear to replace. I'm ruining your life, Ethan said. No, Olivia, you can't go to work. You can't leave your apartment without being harassed. Your face is on national television because of me. Because of nosy people with nothing better to do. Because I was selfish. I knew what this world was like, and I pursued you anyway. I'm an adult. I made my own choice. And I'm giving you another one. He turned to face her, and his eyes were devastated. Walk away. End this. Go back to your life. I'll take the heat. Make a statement that it was brief and over. You can disappear. Olivia felt like he'd punched her. You want to break up? I want you to be safe. To be happy. To not have your life destroyed by my baggage. So you're pushing me away. To protect me. How noble. Her voice dripped with anger. Except you don't get to decide what's best for me, Ethan. I do. You don't understand. No, you don't understand. She stood pacing. I've been through hell. I've lost my father. I've struggled. And I came out the other side. And I built a life. And I found you. Someone who sees me. Who loves me. And now you want to give that up because it's hard? Because people are mean? Screw that. Olivia, I'm not some fragile thing that needs protecting. I'm strong enough to handle this. The question is, are you? He stared at her. What? Are you strong enough to choose love over fear? To choose us over your reputation? Because that's what this is really about, isn't it? You're scared. You're scared that if you let yourself love me fully, publicly, I'll be taken away like Sarah was. Direct hit. She saw it in his face. That's not. It is. You're trying to leave me before life can take me from you. But Ethan, that's not living. That's just surviving. And you promised me you were done just surviving. The silence stretched between them. Then Ethan dropped his head into his hands. I can't lose you, he whispered. I can't go through that again. Olivia knelt in front of him, taking his hands. You won't. I'm here. I'm staying. But you have to let me. You have to trust that we're stronger than the noise. What if we're not? Then we'll fail together. But at least we'll have tried. He looked at her, really looked, and she saw the moment his fear cracked. I'm terrified, he admitted. Me too. This won't get easier. Probably not. They'll keep coming after you. After us. Let them. He pulled her into his lap, holding her like she was the only solid thing in a tilting world. I love you, he said into her hair. God help me, I love you so much. Then fight for this. For us. Show them that you're not ashamed of me. I could never be ashamed of you. Then prove it. The next day, General Ethan Walker did something unprecedented. He called a press conference. Not through military channels. Not with Pentagon approval. He simply called the major news networks and said he had a statement. They came. Of course they came. He stood at a podium outside the Pentagon, in full dress uniform, medals gleaming, and he looked directly into the cameras. I've been asked repeatedly about my personal life, he began, and I've refused to comment because I believe that some things should remain private. But the continued harassment of someone I care about has forced my hand. He paused, gathering his words. My name is General Ethan Walker. I've served this country for 29 years. I've commanded soldiers in combat, made decisions that cost lives and saved lives, and done my duty to the best of my ability. But I'm also a man, a human being. And 7 years ago, I lost my wife in a tragic accident. For 7 years, I've existed in a kind of stasis, performing my duties, but not truly living. His voice remained steady, but Olivia, watching from her apartment with her mother, saw the emotion beneath. And then I met someone who reminded me what living feels like. Her name is Olivia Carter. She's intelligent, compassionate, strong, and she works at a bookstore in DuPont Circle. She's also 20 years younger than me, which apparently is newsworthy. But what's actually newsworthy is that she saw past my rank and my reputation to the broken person underneath, and she chose to love that person anyway. Tears streamed down Olivia's face. I'm not asking for privacy. That ship has sailed. But I am asking for decency. Olivia has done nothing wrong. She's not seeking attention or fame. She's just a woman trying to live her life. And if you have issues with our relationship, with the age difference, with the propriety, with whatever narrative you've constructed, take them up with me. Leave her alone. He gripped the edges of the podium. I spent 7 years being a ghost. I'm done being a ghost. I'm choosing to live. even if it's messy and public and complicated. Because the alternative, the safe, isolated alternative, isn't living at all. It's just a slow death. He stepped back from the podium. That's all I have to say. Thank you. And he walked away, ignoring the shouted questions, the flash of cameras, the chaos he'd left in his wake. Olivia's phone rang 30 seconds later. Did you watch? Ethan's voice. Yes. She was crying too hard to say more. Was it okay? Was it too much? I didn't clear it with you first, and I should have, but I just... It was perfect. You were perfect. Ethan, I'm coming to you. Now. Is that okay? Yes. Please. He arrived 20 minutes later, still in uniform, and she launched herself at him the second she opened the door. They held each other in the tiny apartment entryway, both crying, both laughing, both overwhelmed and relieved and terrified and hopeful. We're going to be okay, Olivia whispered. Promise. Promise. And standing there, a 4-star general and a bookstore clerk, choosing each other in defiance of judgment and fear and the weight of public scrutiny. They believed it. The press conference changed everything and nothing. The media frenzy didn't stop. If anything, it intensified. But the narrative shifted. Before, Olivia had been the mystery woman, a vaguely scandalous figure. Now she was the woman a war hero chose to love publicly. Sympathetic profiles appeared. Think pieces about grief and second chances. A hashtag let them love, started trending. Not everyone was supportive, of course. Plenty of people still criticized the age gap, questioned Olivia's motives, suggested Ethan was having a midlife crisis. But the toxicity lost some of its bite, because Ethan had stood in front of the world and claimed her, defended her, made it clear that she wasn't a scandal or a secret, but someone he valued enough to risk everything for. And that mattered. May arrived, and with it, a semblance of normalcy. The photographers stopped camping outside Olivia's apartment. She returned to work at Marginalia, where customers were curious, but kind. Ethan's superiors at the Pentagon made it clear they weren't thrilled about the publicity, but they couldn't actually penalize him for having a personal life. Life settled into a rhythm. Ethan would finish his duties and come to the bookstore, where Olivia would be waiting with a new book recommendation. They'd have dinner, sometimes at restaurants, sometimes at her apartment or his townhouse, learning to cook together with varying degrees of success. They talked about everything. His therapy sessions, where he was finally processing Sarah's death properly, her manuscript, which she'd started revising with renewed energy, their families, his estranged sister in Oregon, her mother's worsening arthritis. They made love slowly, learning each other's bodies and boundaries, finding intimacy that was both physical and profoundly emotional. They fought occasionally, about his tendency to make unilateral decisions for her protection, about her habit of downplaying her own needs, about whose turn it was to do dishes. Normal couple things. It was terrifying and wonderful and real. In early June, Ethan took her to Arlington National Cemetery. They walked through the rows of white headstones in silence, his hand warm in hers. He stopped at Section 60, where the newest casualties were buried. This is where Sarah is, he said quietly. Olivia's heart clenched. Do you want me to? Should I wait somewhere else? No. I want you here. He squeezed her hand. I need you here. They approached a simple grave marker. Sarah Elizabeth Walker, 1978 to 2019. Beloved wife, devoted nurse. Her light still shines. Ethan knelt, placing a bouquet of white roses on the grass. Hi, Sarah, he said. I'm sorry it's been a while. Work has been, well, you know how it is. He paused, gathering words. I brought someone to meet you. Her name is Olivia. God, where do I start? She's kind and brilliant, and she laughs at my terrible jokes, and she makes me want to be better. Not for duty or honor or any of that. Just better. For her. For myself. Tears tracked down his face. I loved you, Sarah. I will always love you. You were my first great love, and you made me believe I could be more than just a soldier. But I know, you wouldn't want me to spend the rest of my life alone, punishing myself. You tell me to live, to be happy. His voice broke. So I'm trying to do what you'd want, and I wanted you to know about her. About Olivia. I think you'd like her. She reminds me of you, actually. The way she sees people. The way she cares. Olivia knelt beside him, her own tears falling. Hi, Sarah, she said softly. I promise I'll take care of him. He's pretty terrible at taking care of himself. So it's kind of a full-time job. But I don't mind. He's worth it. Ethan looked at her, eyes red and grateful. They stayed there for a long time. The three of them, past, present, and future, existing together in a moment of grace and release. When they finally left, walking hand in hand back through the cemetery, Ethan seemed lighter. Thank you, he said. For what? For not being afraid of her. Of my past. A lot of people can't handle loving someone who's loved before. Your past made you who you are. I'm not afraid of it. I'm grateful for it, actually. For her. She loved you through the hard years. She shaped the man I fell in love with. You're extraordinary, he said. You keep saying that. Because it keeps being true. That night, at his townhouse in Georgetown, Ethan cooked dinner, or attempted to. The salmon was slightly charred, the asparagus mushy, but Olivia ate it with enthusiasm and only minimal teasing. After they'd cleared the dishes, they settled on the couch with wine and the view of a small garden, where roses were just beginning to bloom. I've been thinking, Ethan said. Dangerous. He smiled. I'm up for reassignment in August. The Pentagon wants me to take a joint command position in Stuttgart. It's a 2-year posting. Prestigious. Important. Olivia's stomach dropped. Oh, I'm going to turn it down. What? Ethan, no. You can't. That's huge for your career. I've had a career. 30 years of it. And it cost me my marriage, my peace, my life. I'm not doing that anymore. So what will you do? There's a position here. Advisor to the chairman of the Joint Chiefs. Less operational, more strategic. I'd stay in D.C. full-time. No deployments. You'd hate that. You're a field commander. I was a field commander. Now I'm just a man who wants to come home to the woman he loves every night. Olivia set down her wine glass. You're serious. Completely. Ethan, I don't want to be the reason you give up. You're not the reason I'm giving up anything. You're the reason I'm choosing something better. There's a difference. She searched his face. You're sure? I've never been more sure of anything. What if it doesn't work out? Between us? What if? Then it doesn't work out. And I'll still be in a job I can live with, in a city I love, close to a woman who, even if we're just friends, makes my life better. There's no scenario where choosing to stay is wrong. Olivia felt her walls crumble. I love you. So much. Sometimes it scares me how much. Good. He pulled her onto his lap. Be scared. I am. But let's be scared together. Together, she echoed. He kissed her, slow and deep and full of promise, and Olivia felt the future shift into focus. Not perfect. Not easy. But theirs. August arrived with heat and humidity, and a crisis neither of them saw coming. Ethan's decision to turn down the Stuttgart posting had ruffled feathers. Some of his colleagues understood. Others saw it as a political move, a sign that he was prioritizing personal life over duty. The grumbling stayed mostly internal, until someone leaked his decision to the press. General Walker turns down prestigious command for girlfriend. Is love clouding military judgment? The article, splashed across the front page of a military news site, was brutal. It quoted unnamed Pentagon sources suggesting Ethan was compromised, that his relationship with Olivia was affecting his professional decisions, that he was no longer fit for high-level command. It snowballed. Conservative pundits weighed in, criticizing him for going soft. Liberal pundits defended him, sparking a culture war about military service and personal autonomy. The Senate Armed Services Committee announced they'd be reviewing senior military assignments, with specific interest in personal factors influencing career decisions. It was a nightmare, and it put Olivia squarely in the crosshairs. It's my fault, she said, pacing Ethan's living room. I'm ruining your career, your reputation, everything you've built. You're not ruining anything. The system is broken, and I'm refusing to play by broken rules. Ethan, they're talking about investigating you, about whether you're compromised. This is serious. I know it's serious. Then maybe. She stopped, the words catching in her throat. Maybe we should take a break. Just until this dies down. He stood from the couch, moving toward her with measured steps. Say that again. I'm saying maybe it would be better if... If what? If you disappeared? If I pretended we don't matter? If I went back to being a good little soldier who prioritizes duty over every fucking thing else? His voice was rising, anger breaking through his usual control. Is that what you want? I want you to be okay. I want your career. I don't care about my career. He was shouting now. I care about you. I care about having a reason to wake up that isn't just obligation and duty and 30 years of sacrifice. I care about being human for the first time since Sarah died. But at what cost? At any cost. He ran his hands through his hair, breathing hard. Don't you get it? They can take the stars. They can take the medals. They can take everything. But they can't take you unless you let them. Olivia was crying now. I just don't want to be the reason you lose everything. You're the reason I found everything. He pulled her into his arms. You're the reason I remember what it's like to feel, to hope, to love. Without you, all that other stuff, the rank, the respect, the legacy, it's just empty. Ethan, I know you're scared. I'm scared too. But walking away from each other won't make this better. It'll just break us both. She buried her face in his chest, sobbing. What do? We fight. We stand together. We refuse to let them dictate our lives. And if they force you out? Then I retire. I've got my 29 years. I can leave with full pension and benefits. And I'll find something else. Consulting. Teaching. Hell, maybe I'll work at your bookstore. Despite everything, she laughed. You'd be terrible at customer service. Probably. But I get to be near you every day. Seems like a fair trade. They held each other as the sun set outside, painting the Georgetown row houses in shades of amber and gold. And Olivia made a decision. 2 days later, she published an op-ed. She'd written it in one sitting, barely sleeping, pouring everything into the words. She sent it to the Washington Post, not expecting them to actually run it. They did. Front page of the online edition, with her byline. I'm the woman dating General Walker. Here's what you should know. By Olivia Carter. The piece was raw and honest. About meeting Ethan by accident. About falling in love with a man still healing from tragedy. About being subjected to scrutiny she'd never asked for. About watching someone she loved be attacked for choosing happiness. About the military's culture that demanded inhuman sacrifice, that treated love and vulnerability as weaknesses. She wrote about her father, about what it meant to love someone in service, about the cost borne by families and partners who stood beside soldiers and firefighters and first responders. And she wrote about choice. General Walker chose to turn down a posting in Germany. Not because I manipulated him. Not because he's compromised or weak. But because after 30 years of service, after losing his wife to the demands of his career, he decided that he wanted to be present for his own life. That he wanted to love and be loved without apology. If that's controversial, then we need to examine our values as society. Because the same military that asks soldiers to sacrifice everything for their country should not punish them for wanting something back, for wanting connection, for wanting to be whole human beings instead of just weapons of war. I love Ethan Walker, not his rank, not his medals. Him, the man who reads poetry and cries at movies and tries so hard to do the right thing even when it costs him. And I'm not going anywhere, no matter how many anonymous sources question my motives or suggest I'm too young or too ordinary to deserve him. He deserves happiness. He deserves peace. And if loving me gives him that, then I will love him fiercely and unapologetically for as long as he'll have me. That's not a scandal. That's just love. And love should never be controversial. The response was overwhelming. Hundreds of comments, mostly supportive. Veterans writing about their own struggles balancing service and family. Military spouses sharing stories of sacrifice and loss. Civilians simply saying, "Thank you for reminding us that soldiers are human." There was backlash, of course. People who thought she was attention-seeking, who doubled down on criticism. But the tide had shifted. 3 days after the op-ed published, the Senate Armed Services Committee quietly dropped their inquiry. A week later, Ethan's appointment to the Joint Chiefs Advisory position was confirmed. And 2 weeks after that, the media moved on to the next scandal. September arrived, crisp and golden. Ethan and Olivia walked along the National Mall, surrounded by joggers and tourists, and the ordinary bustle of the city. "We survived," Olivia said. "We did. Think it's over?" "The scrutiny? Probably not entirely. But the worst of it, maybe." They sat on a bench near the Lincoln Memorial, watching the sun dip toward the horizon. "I got an email from a literary agent," Olivia said. "She read my op-ed. Wants to see my manuscript." Ethan turned to her, eyes bright. "That's incredible. It's just a request, not a guarantee. It's momentum. It's possibility. You should celebrate." "I'm cautiously optimistic." "Very on brand for you." She laughed, leaning into him. "What about you? How's the new position?" "Quieter. More strategic. Less adrenaline." He paused. "I like it. I actually like it. I'm not counting down days until the next deployment. I'm not living for the next mission. I'm just living. Looks good on you." Yeah. You smile now. Real smiles. I didn't see those when we first met. I didn't remember how. And now." He tilted her chin up, kissed her softly. "Now I remember. You remind me. Every single day." December brought the first snow. Washington, D.C. transformed into a postcard. White-dusted monuments, holiday lights strung along Embassy Row, the scent of roasted chestnuts from street vendors. Olivia stood at the window of Ethan's townhouse, watching snowflakes drift past the glass. Behind her, a fire crackled in the fireplace. Classical music played softly from the speakers. "You're thinking too loud," Ethan said from the couch. She turned. He was reading the collected poems of Mary Oliver, the same book he'd bought from her 8 months ago, with his feet propped on the ottoman and a glass of bourbon in hand. Domestic, peaceful, content. "Just watching the snow," she said. "Come here." She crossed to him, tucking herself against his side. He set the book down, wrapping his arm around her. "My agent wants the full manuscript by January," she said. She's really excited. Thinks she can sell it. Of course she can. It's brilliant. You haven't read it. I've read your soul, Olivia. The manuscript will be brilliant. She smiled. My mom's arthritis is getting worse. She might need to move in with me. Or us. I don't know. Is that okay? More than okay. We'll figure it out. You're being suspiciously agreeable. I'm in love. It makes me agreeable. Who are you? And what have you done with the grumpy general I met? He kissed the top of her head. He's still here. Just happier. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the fire and the snow, and feeling the profound rightness of the moment. I want to ask you something, Ethan said eventually. Okay. And if it's too soon, tell me. I'll wait. I'm good at waiting. Olivia's heart started to race. Ethan. He shifted, moving her gently so he could stand. Then he knelt in front of the couch, pulling a small velvet box from his pocket. Oh my God, Olivia whispered. I've given 30 years to the army, he said. 30 years of my life in service of something larger than myself. And I don't regret it. But I also don't want to spend the next 30 years serving an institution. I want to spend them serving love. Us. You. He opened the box. A simple ring. A single diamond. Elegant and understated. I know it's only been 8 months. I know by conventional standards, this is fast. But I also know that I don't want to waste another day not being clear about what I want. And what I want is a life with you. Officially. Publicly. Permanently. Tears streamed down Olivia's face. I want to wake up next to you every morning, he continued. I want to read terrible poetry and eat your experimental cooking and watch you succeed in all the ways I know you will. I want to argue about book themes and politics and whose turn it is to take out the trash. I want ordinary and extraordinary and everything in between. Ethan, I love you, Olivia Carter. You saved my life. Not metaphorically. Actually, you took a man who was barely existing and reminded him what it meant to live. And if you'll let me, I'll spend the rest of my life returning the favor. He took a shaky breath. Will you marry me? Olivia was sobbing now. Full, messy, joyful tears. Yes, she gasped. Yes, of course, yes. He slid the ring onto her finger, a perfect fit. And then she was pulling him up, kissing him through tears and laughter and overwhelming relief. I love you, she said between kisses. I love you so much. Thank God, he breathed, because that would have been really awkward otherwise. She laughed, that free, unguarded sound he'd first heard 8 months ago when she was fixing her hair in his car window, the sound that had cracked open his frozen heart. 1 year later, black Chevrolet Suburban was parked on Constitution Avenue. Same location, same government plates. Different moment. Olivia stood beside the vehicle, smoothing her dress. They'd just come from a Pentagon ceremony, Ethan's official retirement. 30 years of service, commemorated with speeches and medals, and the respect of an entire institution. He'd smiled through the whole thing. Real smiles. Now they were going to dinner with her mother and his sister, who'd flown in from Oregon. Then home to their townhouse in Georgetown. Their townhouse, joint mortgage, shared life. Olivia caught her reflection in the tinted window of the Suburban. Her hair was wind-tangled again. She laughed, reaching up to smooth it. Some things never change, Ethan said behind her. She turned. He'd loosened his dress uniform tie, hands in his pockets, watching her with that soft expression that still made her breath catch. I was just thinking about the first time, she said. Me too. Did you know? Know what? That morning, when I used your window, did you know it would change everything? He moved closer, reaching out to gently fix a strand of hair that had escaped her attempt at smoothing. His fingers lingered against her temple. No, he said quietly. I just knew I felt something. For the first time in 7 years. Something that wasn't grief or duty or numbness. Just curiosity. Wonder. A crack in the ice. And look at us now. Look at us now. He pulled her close, pressing a kiss to her forehead. Around them, the city moved. Traffic and pedestrians, and the endless churn of Washington, D.C. doing its business. But for this moment, they were still. Centered. Home. Thank you, Ethan said. For what? For adjusting your hair in a stranger's car window. For laughing at yourself. For being exactly who you were in that moment. For not knowing that a broken general was watching and having his entire world shifted. Olivia's eyes filled with tears. You're gonna make me cry. Again. I make you cry a lot. Happy tears. Those are allowed. He cupped her face in his hands. Those warriors' hands that had held weapons and signed orders and carried the weight of command. And now held her with such tenderness it made her heart ache. I'm going to spend the rest of my life making you happy, he said. That's my new mission. My new purpose. What about your own happiness? You are my happiness. She kissed him there on the sidewalk, next to his former military vehicle, in full view of anyone passing by. Kissed him like they weren't a retired general and a soon-to-be published author. Like they were just two people who'd found each other against impossible odds and chose to build something beautiful from broken pieces. When they separated, Ethan rested his forehead against hers. All you did, he whispered, was adjust your hair in a stranger's car window. All I did, she agreed. But in that quiet reflection, he continued, you healed a soldier who thought he was beyond saving. We healed each other, Olivia corrected. You gave me permission to love someone again, to trust, to believe that happy endings exist outside of books. Do they exist? I don't know about endings, but happy beginnings? Definitely. He smiled, that full, unguarded smile that still felt like a gift every time. Then let's begin, he said, and hand in hand, hearts intertwined, they walked away from the window and into the rest of their lives. Behind them, the tinted glass reflected the city and sky and the faint image of two people who'd found each other in the most unexpected moment. A general and a dreamer, a warrior and a healer. Two souls who'd learned that sometimes the most courageous act isn't surviving the battlefield. It's choosing to love again after loss. And that reflection, that simple, profound truth, would shine between them for all the years to come. The end. In a world that often rewards hardness and emotional distance, This story is a reminder that vulnerability isn't weakness. That choosing love, messy, complicated, imperfect love, is the bravest act of all. Ethan and Olivia's journey reminds us that healing isn't linear, that second chances exist, and that sometimes the smallest moments, a reflection in a window, a laugh at our own imperfection, can change the entire trajectory of our lives. May we all have the courage to adjust our hair in strangers' windows. May we all be willing to crack open and let the light in. May we all choose to live, not just survive,